Hello, Stablecoin Conference. I'm Ben Reed. I'm the head of stablecoins at Bitso, as well as Juno, the issuer arm of Bitso, which issues a Mexican peso stablecoin. And with that in mind, this is a panel especially about non-dollar stablecoins. And we have a fantastic group here that I think is extremely close to it. Starting on my left, we have Raj, who is head of payments and stablecoins at the Monad Foundation. We have David Taylor, who is CEO at Etherfuse, which is the issuer of Mexican peso stablecoin as well as tokenized sovereign debt. We have William from Minteo, which issues a Colombian stablecoin, a Colombian peso stablecoin. And we have Tomas from BRL1, which represents a BRL, Brazilian real stablecoin. And we're happy to be here. Guys, do you want to introduce yourselves any further or introduce anything else about your companies?
I'll just quickly go. First off, Monad is a L1 blockchain. We're hyper-focused on stablecoin and payments. Also co-founder of Portal, stablecoin developer platform that was recently acquired by Monad Foundation as a separate entity. So this is like a huge focus for us. Non-USD stablecoins just a start. I mean, USD is just a starting point. Non-USD is like the next area that I'm super excited about.
Yeah, Etherfuse, our mission is to tokenize sovereign debt in the form of an interest-bearing stablecoin on-chain for all countries around the world. We hope to get what we think is the proper counterparty for the non-US or last mile for stablecoins available on-chain to everybody.
So Minteo, we're a stablecoin issuer for Latin America. We focus primarily on COPM, which is the Colombian peso fully collateralized. So happy to be here.
Well, thank you for being here and the invitation. BR1 is a network of an alliance of players that are willing to share benefits and share market view and really use this real stable coins. We're here also to invite other people to join us. So happy to talk to people who are willing to understand this better.
Great. So to kick things off, I don't think the folks in the panel here, and I don't think anybody in the room needs to sort of state the obvious that non-USD stablecoins still represent a small fraction of the market. I think people here are pretty aware of the numbers today that USD stablecoins dominate. But I also think the folks in this panel would agree, myself included, that if you're looking closely, if you're paying attention, there is unique activity in the non-dollar stablecoin world that is bubbling beneath the surface and some very interesting things happening. And so with that in mind, guys, what's a unique trend or use case that you're seeing that's maybe non-obvious that a USD stablecoin just can't address or fulfill as effectively? Any ideas to share with the audience?
If you want, I can start. I mean, I think, I love this question because I think it's always been sort of hotly debated what role non-USD stablecoins are gonna have in the world. And the way that we always think about it at Minteo is kind of going back to first principles. You think about the utility of money, right? And really, money has 4 core functions: store value, which I think the US dollar does incredibly well in. I think Paula from Tether the other day said that around 35% of USDT is still used just for savings, right? And I guess similar to Bitcoin, this is an incredible asset to hold, especially in emerging markets. It's probably the first time in history that these markets get access to the US dollar in such an easy way. But then there's really 3 other functions of money, right? You talk about medium of exchange, and you talk about, for example, like last mile delivery of payments, and I think that's something that local currencies are very strong in. 99.7% of transactions in Colombia happen in local currency. And a lot of these economies basically just run on local currency. Unit of account, people are used to thinking in pesos, in reais, in sols, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. And then method of deferred payment, which is sort of that 4th function of money, credit, right? People want access to that in local currency just because it's absolutely insane to take out a loan in a foreign currency, especially if it's a currency that's sort of stronger than your own local currency, just because of the FX risk there. So I think with that framework, you really understand, okay, so the US dollar is very strong, but I think local currencies fulfill very well 3 out of the other 4 functions of money. I think, for example, payments is gonna be huge, both as like last mile delivery in cross-border payments against the dollar, but also in local payments, sort of as the entire market and liquidity of stablecoins matures.
Yeah.
I love that answer. Raj, you had two thoughts?
Maybe just contextualize. I mean, first off, USDC, USDT, it's been around for, USDC is about 7 years. Tether's been around for almost 10 now at this point. So huge head start on non-USD stablecoins, just as a starting point. So you could argue, for the first, 7 to 10 years, 0% volume for non-USD stablecoins. And in earnest, in the last 2 years, we're starting to see, MXNB, BRL1, COPM, and the volumes are starting to grow now. So what used to be, 0% non-USD is now starting to creep into like, 1, 2, 3%. That's technically exponential growth for what we're seeing on the non-USD side. And I think just to even contextualize it further, just to keep it at a very high level, but the FX markets today are not just dollars. There's euros, there's GBP, there's a number of non-USD stablecoins. In order for this entire on-chain economy to truly persist and grow, we actually do need non-USD stablecoins as well. So I think we're just getting started. It's only been a few years. We have a lot of room to grow, and like a lot of the issuers up here are doing a lot of amazing work to like really drive network effects as well.
Yeah.
I'd say just shortly, we're seeing a lot of people want to boost yields in their native currency. So if you look at a lot of the neobanks here, they've got a lot of adoption just by promoting 15% yields in MXN. Well, if you can get that same yield on chain and put it in a lending market on Morpho, which we've seen, you can compete with that type of adoption. And so we are seeing those type of products and activities.
Yeah, people often, I think, associate like the U.S. Treasury rate with like the potential yield or the interest rate associated with stablecoins, and then when they learn that the CETES rate in Mexico is 7.5% and the SELIC rate in Brazil is 15%, I think it's like eye-opening for some. It gets the gears start turning. Raj, I'm going to stick with you on the next question. From your work at both at Portal and at Monad with a variety of projects globally, do you think that comparing and judging non-USD stablecoins using the same measuring stick as USD stablecoins makes sense, like taking the same frame of reference? Or do we need like a different kind of transparency or a new set of metrics that are a little more important for a local currency asset? I think you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I mean, I think first off, like the metric that I'm most excited about with non-USD stablecoins is actually velocity. And just to define what velocity is, it's the number of times that a specific token or currency is changing hands. Like that's actually a lot more exciting when you look at non-USD stablecoins versus just looking at circulating supply or those sorts of pieces. Like how often is it changing hands? And sometimes, there might be some inflows coming in, USD, maybe it switches to MXNB afterwards, and you want to start to measure that growth. I think the other one that I care about a lot is market depth. And so how many different, currency pairs are being formed with, MXNB or MXNE to like other different currencies also? And then what does that liquidity depth look like? Those are things that I'm actively looking out for. And I think some of the high level basic ones like circulating supply, those are definitely interesting. But I think if you want to look at real utility and usage, those metrics I think are better served to evaluate the growth rate for some of these markets as well.
I'd also like to add something there, and I agree with Raj. I think going back to the sort of the four functions of money, I think velocity is a great example of utility, right? And utility in payments, utility in people actually using it for transactions, right? So I think that's also a metric that for us is very important. I do think over time, AUM should grow, and the reason why it should grow is because you're basically addressing the issue around like the stablecoin sandwich that people talk about, right? Like the on-ramp, the off-ramp. In a way, you can't really have like a full on-chain economy until you have proliferation of local stablecoins, because that's ultimately what ensures that sort of like the entire economy of all these balances, moves on chain, right? So I think, they complement each other nicely, but I do think, at least for now, velocity, sort of the number of players that are interacting, within these sort of like closed ecosystems, is a good starting point. And then hopefully we will see just in general much more liquidity on both non-USD stablecoins as well as obviously the growing number of liquidity on USD stablecoins.
I've heard a point made a few times about sort of on-chain FX, and I like to say like you can't have on-chain FX with a dollar-only stablecoin world. It just doesn't work. that way. So there's obviously like a use case there to the extent people believe that this on-chain FX trend will continue, and there certainly seems to be evidence of that. We can't talk about local stablecoins, especially in Latin America, and the future of them without talking about regulations. We're going to move on to a regulatory topic. Tomas, in particular, Brazil is seen as a regulatory leader in Latin America, but how do you see Brazil's local regulation, both current or expected, like helping or hindering the growth of local stablecoins like BRL1? Like, what's the most critical regulatory clarity that you need or that you'd look for?
Well, we are in very good shape. So first, we have the luck of having a very proactive regulators in Banco Central and CVM, which is the Securities Commission. But not only luck, because Bitso, Mercado Bitcoin, Foxbit, they have been for a long time doing best practice advocacy and helping very healthy markets. So in this sense, we're in very good shape because payments, cross-border, trading, this is all allowed by local regulation. Okay. Now, what we can see more, and this is happening very fast, is that we can unlock new user cases. For instance, we're not yet fully ready for finance, for collateral, for credit. And this is kind of the next step in regulation, which is also in response to the Genius Act a bit, is getting clear that now what you have as permitted will not only be permitted, but sanctioned and clearly stated how the rules are applying for directly stable coins. So imagine that now we can do payments, we can do FX, we can do all this with stable coins in Brazil, and it's really happening. And by the way, it's really happening, as we just said, like people thinking in reais in Brazil. We see that even though we're launched for 6 months, we see many traders who are using before USDC Tether now are migrating to use BR1 to trade and move among exchanges. So this is really a trend that's happening, but yet we're looking for the next step, which is, okay, how about we do collateral? How about we really move capital and use real to move capital around the world? And how about we start giving the possibility for players in Brazil that are exporters or having exposure abroad and want to keep in the digital world, but they want to keep in their neutral mindset, which is real. And this is something that BR1 will do. And in terms of Brazilian economy, regulators will see that as very favorable because in this sense, we capture global savings and global investments to strengthen Brazilian financial centers. So this, I think, is the next step. We'll surely have some clarity and some very, hopefully good, and again, Bitso is doing their part, Mercado Bitcoin is doing their part in advocating that, but hopefully very good new regulation in place for us too.
They're definitely leaned in and engaged from what I've seen. That the regulator in Brazil is following along very closely and engaged.
And in fact, if you see the history of PIX, which is kind of a SPAY and open finance and so on, regulators were really pushing ahead. It was right, like really innovator regulators in a way. So it's very good.
David, Etherfuse issues tokenized sovereign debt, which is it brings like a unique perspective on the relationship between digital assets and the government. And from that vantage point, what's a potential regulatory change or incentive a government could enact that would effectively accelerate the adoption of local currency stablecoins or the broader use of tokenized sovereign debt?
Well, I think to start, one, I hope that non-US sovereign nations or even Western nations kind of understand the existential crisis they may be in. With the world is moving to stablecoins and it's 99.95% US dollars. So to maintain your sovereignty, you do need power over your currency. And so there does need, regulators or countries do need to provide some answer to help grow in this ecosystem. And we believe that answer to be coupling the yield with the currency to provide a good counterparty to the dollar. So for us, or for anyone in the future, it would be provide a mechanism to enact that or operate in that country and create that product. I don't think anyone really wants to be a first mover. And as an entrepreneur, there is a lot of fear that you are trying to do something good, but the ambiguity is strong, or you're unaware of problems, and you may get yourself in trouble. So I think, like in the US, the Genius Act was great. It unfortunately does have a pretty clear law against yield, or is pretty clear against yield. So for especially LATAM, I think a good way that they could help out is to be very clear that coupling yield with stablecoins through either some reward mechanism or holding or staking is a good counterparty, is a good response to this growth, and it is a good way that they can maintain their sovereignty. And so just clear guidelines. And we didn't quite have that here, but we did have a lot of good discussion, and we're able to be successful.
Yeah. It is sort of like, I guess, the regulators and the governments that recognize that both tokenized sovereign debt as well as local stablecoins also are a tool to sort of protect against over-dollarization.
Yes.
We appreciate seeing that, right? We think that's sort of a insightful.
Yeah, and the irony of the lack of clearness is it enables us to exist. If it was clear, it would be Santander and BBVA sitting up here issuing a new stablecoin probably. But so it's a good place for us to be. But yeah, we do see it as a way that other countries can provide a comparable store of value and a comparable tool and compete in this space.
Cool. Last question on regulation. This will just be an open question, whoever kind of wants to jump in, which I'm sure there's been a lot of panels that have touched on Genius Act and the Genius Act and MiCA in Europe. They kind of loom large. They're setting powerful precedents globally. And how do we expect like these big international regulatory frameworks to impact how Latin American nations approach their own stablecoin regulations? Like from the perspective of an issuer in Latin American countries, do we want to see passporting? Do we want to see deep similarities, or do we want to see nations down here kind of go their own way and set their own frameworks? I don't know. Any thoughts on that?
I would say, just quickly, sorry, it's going to happen, and I don't know that we want to see it, but it is pretty bullish for non-US stablecoins in that MiCA or MiCA, it's like a tariff on US dollar denominated tokens, and so they are taking this saturation of US dollars seriously. I do believe we'll see it. So it's not necessarily if I know we want it, but we're planning for it.
Yeah.
I mean, one thing that I'll add is that I think it's also a wake-up call for central bankers and governments around the world, where especially in LATAM, there's a lot of stablecoin adoption and usage already today. Where if someone like Europe and the US are enshrining and have it as law in the markets, I think we've seen the dollar actually take a new evolution that we haven't seen before. And it's not really that often. It's usually like every 100, 200 years do you see currency actually make that type of evolution, for seashells to gold to fiat currencies to now like a digital form factor. And so I think it's important for everyone to embrace it, whether it's passporting or not, maybe like more nuance across different markets, but it's a truly new evolution that it's a wake-up call for everyone to have like at least a point of view on it.
Yeah, and I'll add that this is something relatively new, but if you compare to like even Bretton Woods or Plaza Accord, it's very new in the sense that now we have a centralized government that doesn't require having countries coming to consensus. It's simply that coordination was just with the US agenda, and with that, they found a way to sell dollars to the world, and by the way, at the same time, keep demand for treasuries. So this is a huge impact for global monetary policy. It's something that we don't see for, some 20, 30 years. This is because of technology also, but this is also because of the way society is working. And now you see MiCA is more a play of enhancing citizens' rights towards how stablecoins work. So we're going to see, especially in LATAM, a reaction to both these movements. We need to find a way that, well, at least Central Bank of Brazil requires a way to find that, okay, digital money is running and it's happening. How can we extend to Brazilian citizens the regulatory security, this implication of legal justice in Brazil to them? And this is something very important. But it's also very important to keep in mind that monetary policy should be something sovereign for those who can. And we'll see a response to that quickly. Not sure which country will go more like, okay, let's make sure that citizens' approach is the one that's more important, or the monetary policy. But there's no way they're not going to do that. It has to do this.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Personally, I'd love to see some version of passporting so we don't have too many patchworks, but at the same time, these countries are all individual. If you look at El Salvador, their framework is unique and stands alone and has some differences. And so I can't imagine we're going to see mirror images, but I do hope we have some interoperability. We'll see how it plays out. Let's look forward to the last couple minutes. Also kind of an open question, or why don't we start with William on this one? What single development or trend do you think is going to be the most significant growth driver for non-USD stablecoins, or maybe COP-M, your stablecoin if you want, in LATAM, like over the next, call it 3 years? Like, is it institutional adoption? Is it something DeFi related? Is it something else entirely? What's the biggest trend you're looking to see grow or to ride?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, at the end of the day, so I guess at least I think of it two ways. One is I think payments is going to be huge, right? I think we're seeing, as you mentioned, sort of like this FX pairs against local currency. So I think that's going to continue to grow. And it's sort of this self-fulfilling prophecy or this flywheel, right? Of like, the more dollars you have or the more USDT you have against on-chain currencies, the more businesses and people get on board. So then the higher the volume, the higher the liquidity, the better the spreads. And it's kind of like a reinforcing loop. So I think that's going to continue driving a lot of adoption, right? And then I genuinely think that we're also going to start seeing, at least on COPM, pretty fast adoption when it comes to local payments. I think Colombia is a market where local payments are pretty bad, right? I mean, Brazil has Pix, Mexico has SPAY, we have ACH. So I think, even with Breve coming out now and all these things, I still think there's so many limitations. So I do think that the sort of like payments use case is going to happen sooner than I originally expected. And then, I think from then on, I think we'll also see, or hopefully we'll see, more companies building on using basically on-chain tools, sort of this like Web3 stack, right? So I think one of the things that I also think about a lot, and we actually have a term for this, we call them FinChains, which is basically like fintechs building on on-chain infrastructure, and it's part of the reason why we don't have a lot of these like amazing applications that you have in the US, like Robinhood, and is because it's just so hard to integrate to the financial system, right? To payment systems, to banks. So I think as more of these tools sort of like proliferate the market, and the more we have like on-chain liquidity and the more we have like regulatory clarity, a lot of companies are just like naturally going to start building on these tools. They're going to, integrate, COPM. They're going to integrate Brazilian stablecoins, Mexican stablecoins. They're going to, pick their chain that works best for their specific use case. They're going to work with a custodian that makes a lot of sense, whether it's Fireblocks or BitGo, or Utila, whatever it is, Raincard. So they're going to build an entire product around using these tools. And I think at the end of the day, stablecoins are the enabler for this to happen in local economies, right?
As a good American, I commiserate with you on the ACH point. We're running short on time here, so we're going to do down the path. The closing question is just, guys, in one or two sentences, like, what's your ultimate prediction for the future of non-USD stablecoins? Just pull out our crystal ball here. Will they coexist in a USD denominated, dominated crypto landscape? Will they meaningfully challenge dominance in one way? Like, pull out our crystal balls and just make a prediction. A couple sentences. Raj, let's start with you.
Just real quick. Definitely coexist. I'm also excited to see the integration with cash networks. Also, like, cash is a really large economy. Local stablecoins will have like a big play there too.
And I think we're going to see a regression to the mean. Right now, the world is 57% dollar, rest non-dollar. So I think we'll see something close to that.
I think we should aim as an industry to hit that 1% penetration rate that USD stablecoins have over the money supply of the dollar. I think that's a good starting point, right? If we do that, that's going to be a $40 billion industry, and obviously I think that penetration is just going to continue growing. But I think that's sort of that first step that we should all take as non-USD issuers. I think that's what we should push for.
Yeah, absolutely. Very bullish on that. I think that the 99.99% that is today does not reflect the real interest that should be. And as a market solution, I can see that many initiatives that are going now, like joining Juno and integrating and making more integrations with Amex and B, diverse exposures will bring necessarily more use case and more role for US non-US stablecoins.
Not surprising, a bullish panel up here on non-USD stablecoins future. For my part, I'll make a prediction as well. On-chain FX is going to be a thing. The next few years, we're going to see meaningful portions of the FX market move on-chain. And all the call it 20 currencies, are going to have a meaningful non-US stablecoin that is an established and respected and well-used stablecoin in the next 5 years.
Cool.
Okay. Thanks a lot for the time, everyone. Panelists, thank you for your time.
Thank you.